to display his photograph, but Dylan and I are happy to be live with you today. So excited to have Dylan with us. As Matt said, Dylan's been and the Ochsner team has been part of the Provider Trust family for almost 5 years. I had the opportunity to meet Dylan as one of the first after I joined Provider Trust. We were at a conference. Mike Rosen, one of our co-founders, said, "Oh my gosh, you have to meet Dylan. She's one of my favorite compliance professionals." And I think we hit it off from that day forward. We co-presented last year at a conference in New Orleans. I've had the opportunity to visit Dylan and her team at Ochsner a couple times. I can tell you they are a great team, and I just really enjoy the opportunity to spend time with them. So thanks, Dylan, for joining us today. This is pretty exciting. Usually when we do these webinars, I feel like I blabble a lot, and this time I get to just ask some questions and chat with. We obviously prepared a little bit for this and had some conversations about some of the great things that Ochsner did before and during the recent pandemic. So Dylan, maybe if you want to just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and Ochsner, and then we'll kind of jump into some of the great things that you guys are doing over at Ochsner.
Absolutely. Thank you, Donna and Matt, for the intro and certainly for that. So, as Donna mentioned, I have been with Ochsner Health for about 5 years. I'm currently serving as the Assistant Vice President in Compliance and Privacy. So in that role, I have oversight for our regulatory affairs team, our compliance program administration, which includes our exclusions and sanctions monitoring, policy administration, as well as drug diversion response. Ochsner itself, for those of you who don't know, is located in New Orleans, or sort of headquartered, was founded in New Orleans. We are a very large nonprofit academic healthcare system. Like I said, the majority of our locations are in Louisiana, but we also have a presence in served populations in Mississippi, as well as along the Gulf South region. At this point, I think we have about 28,000 employees. Our compliance department, so I report to the Chief Compliance Officer. Our department is about 30 FTEs. And we support, like I mentioned, the 28,000 employees, as well as about 4,500 providers. So that's just sort of a little bit of background about Ochsner Health. I think just a couple of notes with respect to the pandemic itself. As many of you are probably aware, obviously New Orleans was really identified pretty early on, I would say, as a hotspot for COVID. And so a lot of the things that I think our healthcare system specifically and our team were sort of called on to start looking at and thinking about differently. Really for us started happening, late February, early March, as we were starting to sort of see the numbers tick up in this particular area, which, for what it's worth, they think was directly related to Mardi Gras, because Mardi Gras, we love to be very close to one another during Mardi Gras. And so that was just sort of has been a little bit of an interesting experience for us, but I think has also probably shaped some of how we have handled our response, over the past couple of months.
Awesome. Thanks, Dylan. And I think all of us who have been to New Orleans can say we all enjoy Mardi Gras.
And we all look forward to a day when everybody can come back to New Orleans.
Fingers crossed someday. Yes. So when you and I were chatting, one of the things I thought was really interesting, and that would be really helpful for the people on our webinar today to hear about, is something that you did actually before the pandemic. You had kind of altered your compliance plan and your work plan process, and really, I think, tried to mirror what the OIG was doing in a bit more of an agile process, perhaps. So if you wouldn't mind, can you just kind of share a little bit about what you all went through?
Absolutely. So prior to, I would say 2018, we were on a pretty standard annual work plan model. So we would really spend a lot of October and November trying to map out what we thought the following calendar year was going to look like, highlighting key initiatives, in addition to sort of the owning that to the board, typically in November or December. I have to give credit to our Chief Compliance Officer for this. This was definitely her brainchild. But in 2018, in response to the word from the OIG that they were going to start shifting dynamic work plan, we decided to sort of follow suit. And so in December of 2018, the work plan that we presented to our board actually consisted of 6 quarters forward looking of what we anticipated would be high level initiatives. And the presentation to the board included an explanation that the OIG is really changing the way it is work planning. And we think that we should do the same in order to be more dynamic, in order to be more agile, in order to really fit the needs of the organization. So in, again, 2018, the work plan that our board approved consisted of all of 2019 and was anticipated to be the first 2 quarters of 2020. Now, hindsight being what it is, that timing worked out pretty well, because what our work plan now gives us the opportunity to do, and what we have sort of built into our rhythm, is our compliance leadership team sits down on a monthly basis and goes over each of those initiatives that is laid out for the following 6 quarters, which 6 are. And we're constantly moving things around on the work plan. So say, for example, the OIG adds something to its work plan in Q3, and we feel like that's something that we really need to sort of get on top of or respond to. We might take something that we originally had scheduled for Q3, bump it back to Q4, maybe bump it up to Q2, but we're constantly able to sort of be more nimble about the thing. Now, again, we did not have a crystal ball, but I can tell you that being in that sort of more core mindset was extraordinarily beneficial when the public health emergency was declared in March, I guess it was. Because what we were able to do was basically, we weren't sort of tied, we didn't feel tied to this work plan and all of these activities, that sort of needed to be checked off, be accomplished. We were really able to say, okay, basically anything that isn't related to the PHE or the pandemic, pencils down. We've got to get really educated. We've got to start keeping up very, very quickly with the changes that are coming down from the government. And then sort of as things settled, I would say going into, Q3-ish, sort of picking back up the work plan and making those adjustments that we needed to show the board the change in work that had happened effectively in Q2, but also to sort of pick up all of those pieces and say, okay, well, this thing didn't get done. Is it still a priority? Does it still need to happen? Is somebody waiting for it? Do we need to, where do we want to put it? What's the team's level of ability to sort of, pick up a new project right now or whatever? And it just gave us the opportunity to just sort of keep rolling, basically, and not feeling like, in the past we would have, which is we would be going again into October or November of this year with a work plan that we had tried to outline back in November of 2019, and sort of trying to get all of these things done that, frankly, everything that we have lived through this year, I would imagine we'd sort of be like, this isn't even the world that we live in anymore. So again, the two were not related, but I would say definitely gave us really strong ability to be able to sort of bob and weave as things shifted in the early days of the pandemic.
Yeah, I think that's such a great idea. And I think even as we look forward, right, we don't know what the next 6 months are going to bring. And I think that's just a great recommendation, to be able to kind of change your process to limit just to a quarter at a time, and really give yourself some grace to be able to change more quickly. So let's kind of fast forward to Tish. It's March, and we all are in this crazy place. Every state is issuing emergency declarations, and you're trying to balance what good looks like and how we respond and how we support, all of the different hospitals that are calling and all the employees are calling. Let's talk a little bit about your team and how they had to adjust, and how, I think, as compliance professionals, right, we're very comfortable saying yes, but we need to do some research. Yes, we'll get back to you. We're going to figure out a way to do that. And time of the essence now, in March and April. How did your team kind of handle that influx of crisis questions and need for support?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I don't know if any of my team members are on the call, but they certainly deserve all out and all of the praise, and normally would, but also sort of a plot twist in March. I was actually on maternity leave when everything sort of started hitting the fan. So they, I can't say enough. They really stepped to the plate. I think for them, and sort of some of the feedback that I've heard, we, again, our sort of culture has always been, or the compliance culture that we have always sort of tried to promote is explaining to people, like, I don't need a nurse on the front line to understand the ins and outs of Stark, beneficiary inducement. I need them to have some basic understanding of, HIPAA privacy. But at the end of the day, our job is to understand each of those laws and rules and how they apply. What I need that nurse to do, or that physician, or that, environmental services aide to do, is to do the best thing for the patient, and to do the right thing by the patient at sort of every turn, and then leave the analysis sort of up to us to kind of figure out how we make something work, or sort of how we handle a big initiative. So I think on one hand that was very helpful, because I think people felt empowered that if they were making the right decision for the care of in a given situation, that from a compliance standpoint, we had their backs, and we're going to make it work. I think one of the things that was sort of interesting for us, and because, again, I think information was coming from the government so quickly. I mean, it was just sort of this constant barrage of updates and of information. I think there was a period of time where sort of the direction from the team and from leadership was basically like, whatever, and do the right thing by the patient, but like, whatever you need to do, we're going to do it. And then, and we'll figure it out. What I think has sort of been an interesting transition now for us is normalcy, to, like you said, getting to the yes, but, or the yes, and, which maybe for a few weeks, it was just like, yes, jot that down, we'll figure it out. But I think, for the team now, sort of getting back to really taking the time to do an in-depth analysis, but also with the understanding that organizationally, and I would say probably industry-wide, the expectation for turnaround and for speed has changed. Because, what we have seen is, under the right circumstances, or under sort of the perfect storm of circumstances, if you will, people have the ability to really respond very, very quickly. And so I think that is still, I don't know that that's going to be, sustainable forever necessarily, but I do think as compliance professionals, that is a tension have to continue to work through, because like you said, the work that we do, often we get a call, we get a question. My boss says this all the time: for every call, every question you ask me, I'm going to have 10 questions in response. And I know for operations that can be frustrating, because they call, they think they have this very simple question, this very simple initiative. In compliance, the devil's in the details. So I need to understand the ins and outs. I need to understand what your ultimate goal is. Now sort of transitioning back to that true in-depth analysis approach is probably going to be a little bit more challenging, because I think people's expectations have changed in terms of, speed and turnaround.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think all of us, there's a new normal in every facet of our lives, I think, and just how we interact with each other. Obviously, we're all sitting in 3 different states and 3 different places today. I suspect most of the people on our webinar are sitting at home potentially. And I think in the healthcare space, that's a really difficult challenge, right? Caregivers to be in the hospital, in the nursing homes, in their facility each and every day. But as a corporate office, we are working remote. We're trying to support them and make sure that we have a safe environment for all parties. I wonder a couple of things as you transition to that remote work environment. Obviously, you were home on maternity leave initially, but came back in a remote world. You also are conducting compliance committee meetings remotely. I know we talked a little bit about the challenges for your team, kind of getting used to remote and feeling comfortable with what that looks like. And then also some of the benefits that you've seen in this, we're all equal now on equal footing being remote from the compliance committee perspective. So if you don't mind, maybe share a little bit about your team. And then let's talk a little bit, compliance committee's changed as well.
Yeah, so a couple of things. And again, like you mentioned, I sort of was personally involved, in some of the earlier approaches that we took, but I think that our chief compliance officer set a really great example really from the beginning, because again, we pivoted very quickly. Again, I was sort of living in a bubble, so I don't know exactly what everybody's situation was, but what happened for us here in New Orleans was on Thursday afternoon, we were in the office. We got a message from the corporate leadership that said we're going to do a pilot test run tomorrow, which was Friday the 13th, which I will never forget that date. And tomorrow on Friday the 13th, just to see, can the system handle everybody going remote, sort of in one fell swoop. And we never went back to the office. So we tested the system on Friday, and by Monday, like that was the world, that we lived in. So I think that tried to adjust to that. And obviously, I mean, people, the kids were home and the virtual learning is happening and the dog's barking and the, the doorbell's ringing and all of these things are sort of happening. Our chief compliance officer, I think, just setting her baseline. And I know this isn't necessarily work for everybody or in everybody's organization. But she almost always has her video when we get on a Zoom call. But she made it very clear to the team that was not an expectation. That was not a requirement. We understood that everybody, was sort of dealing with different things. I mean, I certainly didn't want people to feel like they sort of needed to get dressed up to go sit at their kitchen table. And so I think, like I said, I think the culture sort of allowed us to kind of bob and weave in that. But I think what we found as sort of the days and the weeks went by is, if the host of the call has their video on, and even if, hair's in a ponytail and kids are crying in the background, if the host of the call, then I find that more people on the call are also willing to sort of say like, oh, okay, like this call is going that way. You know what I mean? And I've shared that with the leaders on my team. I think it's really an opportunity to sort of lead by example. And it doesn't mean that you've got to put on a suit jacket and pretend that you're in some state of life that you're not. But I think, having that video on, having people have the ability to see one another. I know for sure a lot of times it's just nice to see somebody who doesn't live in your house, because definitely changed. I think we had an interesting experience specifically with respect to clients, our system compliance committee. And our Q2 meeting, I think, was scheduled for that like third week in March. So obviously that went off the books, that canceled. In May or June, we had our Q compliance committee, and we did it via Zoom. In the past, we had always used WebEx or ReadyTalk. It was really primarily, our organization was not using video chat function almost at all. And so often when we would have our system compliance committee, even just historically, because our organization is so spread out and people are in different locations, you would have a smattering of people who might be able to show up in person, and then the bulk of the group we're on a conference line, and we're basically sort of like on a box in the middle of the conference table. And so I think, to be honest, we went into that Q3 system compliance committee meeting not knowing what to expect. And we were like, you know what, it's on the calendar at this point, enough has been canceled, things had slowed down enough sort of on the COVID side that we're like, we feel like we just need to group together. It may not look like a normal compliance committee meeting, but we're going to go ahead and push through with it. I will tell you, for it being our first system compliance committee meeting via Zoom, it exceeded my expectations. I think, again, we all dialed in, we had our video on. So as people were sort of starting to join the call, they were willing to turn their video on. People seem to be much more engaged. Honestly, I think part of that is because of, the video function. And it honestly, like I said, it far exceeded my expectations. So, again, I think just kind of being willing, maybe even for a few calls, to be the only person who has your video on. And that's okay if that sort of gets people comfortable with turning their video on. I know, and I guess maybe Donna, you can speak a little bit to sort of what Provider Trust's approach is to video. And I know you all have been doing video conferencing as a tech company a lot longer than maybe some of us. I know your approach is a little bit different, but I also think it fits the bill very nicely.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think everybody has to have their own comfort, right? At Provider Trust, we talk about being present, not perfect. Show up, just be there and be okay, like you said, with dogs barking or children crying. And Dylan and I were joking at the beginning, I had to go find my lipstick. I haven't put lipstick on in so long. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to actually put lipstick on to do a Zoom call. I will tell you, I still have my shorts on too, but I think we all are living in a different environment, and I work remote when I'm not in Nashville, when I'm not traveling with our clients. And so I really appreciate now kind of being in the same situation and having the camera on. I'm far away from all of my team members. So being able to see their faces every day and just really feel like I'm engaging with them has been really helpful. I do think growing weary of Zoom calls, and I think you find yourself sitting in the same room every day. I'm in my office. I'm lucky enough to have a home office, so I have a nice stand-up desk, so I can be comfortable, but certainly am tiring of being here. And I think as we're looking at how to continue in this environment, whether in the healthcare space or in our software space, it's really a challenge. One of the things that we've talked about recently at Provider Trust is thinking about reinstituting your commute time. You used to have a routine when you were commuting to work, whether that was just listening to music, a podcast, maybe it was just the quietness of the traffic when you were driving, but you had a beginning and an end to your day. And now that is kind of blurred for a lot of us, right? And all of a sudden, like my house, first floor, the bathroom is a step away, and my kitchen is a step away, and a few more steps is my laundry room and the master bedroom. And like, it's all right here. I don't have to go, but a couple of steps. And if I'm not careful, at the end of the day, I have 800 steps. So being very purposeful, right, of making that transition. And so I think as each of us is kind of trying to maneuver this, we're going to be in this for a long time, right? At least at Provider Trust, we've made the decision we're not going to open our office, if you will, until January, giving our really our team members the opportunity to figure it out. What's school going to look like for your children, instead of that month to month
turmoil,
just change and what's it going to look like this month, and feeling like that is more appropriate. Dylan, you were sharing with me when we chatted, I don't know if I think it was a webinar, or actually I think it was a guest speaker that you had that really gave you some good insights about the Zoom and changing your touch points, that I thought was a really interesting perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think it's interesting to see, and I think it's important to maintain what we've lost is those sort of informal touch points, catching up, oh, we're getting water at the same time, we're at the microwave at the same time, we're passing each other in the hallway, just kind of, hey, hi, how you doing? So I think trying to sort of increase those in the channels that are available to us. It doesn't have to be sort of a 1 hour Zoom call face to face, but for those of you who have teams or direct reports or coworkers, bosses, whatever the case may be, and I've seen this with our team, just that sort of chatter, I guess, for lack of a better word, about, hey, what's going on? How's your week? To sort of create some more informal channels to just check in on people, right? But what Donna was mentioning is Frances Fry, who's a Harvard business professor, spoke to us virtually a couple weeks ago to our leadership, our reformatted leadership retreat. And what she recommended, which I thought is really interesting, I'll be honest, I have not personally implemented it, but it's definitely something I'm sort of trying to figure out as I'm figuring out my own personal schedule. It was when you move into a wholly virtual environment, whatever your normal touch point was. So if you had a one-on-one with each of your direct reports once a week for 1 hour, that's a long time to be on Zoom, in person. Can your internet, Wi-Fi even stay connected that well for that long? Her recommendation was to double the number of times that you meet, but cut the time by 50%. So if you're meeting once a week in a one-on environment for 1 hour, in a virtual environment, her recommendation would be catch up, 30 minutes at the beginning of the week, 30 minutes at the end of the week. Again, to sort of adjust, how are we prioritizing work, what's going on, checking in, having more of that just sort of informal touch point, which, and so you don't sort of feel like, oh, I've got to save all of this information, that all of these things are happening again. The rapid pace has not ended. All these things that are happening for, this one-on-one meeting with my boss, next Monday, and today's Tuesday morning, sort of making those touch points a little bit more frequent, but again, increasing some of that informal other channels, which I think is very beneficial. And we have done that. I will say the informal, just sort of texting and catching up with people and trying to stay up to date on people's lives, when you're not seeing them as often, has definitely been, I think, helpful.
No doubt. And I think each one of us is definitely striving. Each organization is trying to do that a little bit differently and trying to figure out how to keep everyone engaged and motivated and energized. And I know each month we've had different kind of physical activity challenges at Provider Trust, just trying to motivate people to get up and walk around. And we are lucky enough that we have a culture of values where every week on Monday morning, their perspective of a particular value, and on Tuesday our teams meet for a 10-minute stand-up to talk about that. Wednesday we come back together and share, and now on Thursdays we do something called morning mixers, which mixes up all the teams, and every month we have a different group, and those are 10-minute stand-ups Monday through Thursday, and then on Fridays where somebody just gets to talk about something that's really important to them. So just continuing to try to find ways to keep people, like you said, up to date on the chatter of how's life going today, and how are you feeling. And we do a weekly pulse check with all of our team members, just a 1 to 10, how are you doing? And our goal is to make sure everybody's at an 8. And sometimes we're at 2s and 3s, and then how are we going to love our teams a little bit differently to help get that back? So as we're wrapping up for today, just want to maybe close with kind of some thoughts about tomorrow. Like if there's, another phase or a surge, or as the numbers are starting to go up a little bit, one of the things that Dylan, was how, New Orleans has definitely seen a lot of tragedies long before certainly COVID, and how you all have had to deal with obviously Katrina and evacuations and different things. But just maybe just a couple of minutes as we close about how are you planning and looking for tomorrow, and what and what your either your team or your organization, what you're kind of looking towards.
I think, kind of like you mentioned, I think at this point, I was joking with some friends of mine the other day. I'm like, can you believe we used to think we could plan our lives a year in advance? It's like, how naive we were. But I think that's right. I think understanding and sort of always knowing it was true, but now really fully grasping that, we can't control sort of what's coming next. And so, what we control personally, obviously how we react to things, what can we plan for? I think it's really the next 90 days is kind of our best case scenario. With respect to my team and just sort of our department, I will say, I just think now more than ever, transparency is key. And I think, I've shared that with my team. I certainly hope that they believe it, but it is just one of those things is when I know something that I can share with you, I will tell you. And I know that sort of the unknown is crazy, scary, and weird. But at this point, they know as much as I do in terms of when are we going back to the office and what does that look like? And, kind of all of those things and what's going to happen in the meantime. I think we're unprecedented, obviously, time, but I think, historically people have sort of looked to the leaders, of their team or their organization to sort of guide and lead. I definitely think that's the case now, but I think particulars or known values to be able to provide to people, just constantly keeping the lines of communication open, just trying to be as transparent as possible, and just trusting, that we're all in this together. Like I said, I mean, there's nobody on my team that isn't dealing with some crazy thing, in the background of their Zoom video that I haven't dealt with something as crazy or crazier. And that's okay. because that's just where we are right now. And so that for me is really kind of what I'm trying to drive with my group.
Awesome. Thanks, Dylan. Thanks so much
you.
for joining us. This was fun. I enjoyed it. Matt, I think all of our webinars should be like this. We can, so nice to catch up and see you. And we really appreciate your willingness to join our team, and certainly for Ochsner being a part of the Provider Trust family. So Matt, I'll turn it back to you, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dylan. Thanks for bringing your expertise and experience and knowledge to the call today. And Donna, thanks as always for bringing yours as well. Everybody on the phone, thanks for choosing to spend this time with us today. Please be on the lookout this afternoon for that follow-up email with the recording of this session so you can share it. And then your CEUs will be coming shortly. And there is a survey that you'll be prompted to take after this. Please take the time to do that. We really appreciate your feedback and just want to make sure that we continue to bring value to you guys and talk about the things that you want us to talk about. So please fill out that survey if you have a minute or two. And other than that, we hope you guys have a great rest of the week. Please be well and be safe. And thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Fun.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.